Today we're finishing chapter 6, which is really, chapter 7 is really kind of like a wrap up and a reflection, not any specific tool. So this is the end of part 1 of the book, Your Awesome Self. I'm going to take a couple of weeks off from this and from Tanya, and then we're going to Mir Tashem pick up, I guess, in time for before Purim. We'll do a little bit before Purim and then a little bit again before Pesach. I know that so many people, I know that everyone here is going to be disappointed. I am also going to be disappointed. It was a difficult decision, but I'm doing it because I really, like, my deeper desire is to get the book done. I very much want it to be out in time for my father's second yahrzeit. May we be at that time in Yerushalayim, but Tanya was his very big thing, and it would really mean so much to get it done, have it out in time for that. So I'm sorry, I'm just putting it out there. I'll send it to you in email also, but I just felt like I wanted to say that. Hi, okay. So a summary of what we've been talking about is that I used to think worthiness, dignity, respectability, inner peace, security, all that inner wealth that so many of us want and that we have on some level. I used to think of all these qualities that we either have or we don't have. I used to look at people who were very confident or who seemed to be at peace with themselves or secure and have that sense of courage and inner dignity. And I used to be like, okay, well, I was absent that day. You know, I've learned, Baruch Hashem, in our work, that they're not qualities that we get. They're behaviors we could do and habits that we could develop. And we do these behaviors and we develop these habits totally in our minds. We're either riding in our minds, we're always either in awesomeness or we are in otherness. We're either in that space where Hashem's reality is true, and in that space our dignity is true, our respectability is untouchable and unchangeable, and our empowerment to choose is unstoppable, right? Or we're in otherness, where there's other powers and we can be defined by other people, places, and things, and we could have no choice, and we could be helpless and miserable and resentful and stuck. So, but these are behaviors that we do in our minds, getting off the shame, helplessness, blame, self-pity train and onto the worthiness, empowerment, dignity train. That's something that we can do in our minds. And for the past few weeks, that's what we've been talking about. We've been talking about the process, developing awareness, and then, shifting a little bit. In last week's discussion, we talked about how Hashem's value is unchangeable. And the reason why we put that out there so strongly is because as carriers of Hashem, of Hashem's light, right, our value is unchangeable. Our personal value is comparable to Hashem's value. It may feel like people, places, or circumstances, situations that we find ourselves in, challenges that we're confronted with, that they define our value, our personal value. But our mind is like a courtroom, and we are the judge. Nobody else is the judge in our minds. We are the definitive, decisive judge. And when we need help, Hashem weighs in, right? So we're the judge. No other person can dictate what we are going to think and what we are going to decide, what we believe, and the rules that we consider to be true. So we could from that perspective, that's how we could make our neshama and our awesome, our Hashem's value and our neshama, our awesome self, matter more than anything else about us. And we do that one decision, one situation, one moment, one day at a time. Chapter 6, which we're going to be working through today, begins on the bottom of page 68. I'm gonna read a couple of lines from there, and it was hard to choose because I really wanted to read the whole chapter, because chapter 68 has a lot of good stuff in it, but I'm going to just read them from the beginning. All of this that we're talking about, doing all of the above is simple and straightforward, but it's not easy. Hashem is hidden, and we live in a world of ideas that contradict his reality. Without realizing what we're doing, we also give credence to the contradictions. Even if we accept that our neshama has limitless, unchangeable value, we find it challenging to stop giving credence to the idea that people and things can limit and change our value. If a person looks at a tree and says to the tree, "You are a rooster," does the tree become a rooster? Of course not. Even if millions of people start relating to the tree as if it's a rooster, the tree will still be a tree. It will have all the qualities of a tree and it will not start growing feathers. So too, our personal identity is unchangeable just by people saying it's changeable, right? But we tend to feel like it is changeable. We act as if our value could be upgraded or diminished. We naturally tend to think that we're only worthy if the people and things in our life make us feel worthy. If there's hardcore evidence of our worthiness, we want evidence that we could see, touch, and measure. I'm going to skip a bit and just go to the bottom. I'm skipping one paragraph. The labels that come to our minds are impossible to ignore. Often it will seem as if the nastiest labels actually belong to us. And this is our work, to keep choosing our awesome self, to keep deciding again and yet again that Hashem is our absolute truth and that his presence within us is what defines us more than anything else. And every time we make this decision, we are conditioning our minds towards our new rule. We're rewiring our value systems. We're rewriting the rules that our judge, our rational self, will follow when evaluating our self-definition. Before we started this work, our court's disempowering verdicts were uncontested. Nobody challenged it. We didn't challenge our thoughts. We thought we would sit in our shame and worthlessness until an important someone or something in our life would give us a lift. Now our mind is getting used to the new way of operating. Contradictions to Hashem's truth will not be given any credence. Denial of our personal value is a lie. Shame and worthlessness simply does not belong to us. And that's the process. The more we let Hashem's truth be our personal truth, the more connected we will feel to his reality and with the reality of our limitless, unchangeable, unstoppable value. And then our personal truth, like the most powerful horse, can direct us, can lead us and take us forward in our lives and carry us through our challenges, our difficulties, and guide us as we navigate and engage in our relationships. So that's the part of the chapter that's the whole beginning of the chapter. And the summary of the next part is that the greatest challenge in doing all of this is our attachment to the lies that we believe. And when I say lies that we believe, I'm talking about shame, indignity, disempowerment, worthlessness. I'm not good enough. I'm inadequate. Something's wrong with me. I don't belong. I can't. All that negative self-talk, all that disempowering self-talk is really a lie when we think about the truth of our neshama and what our awesome self really is about. But the thing is, we believe those lies. We don't look at them and think, oh, they're lies. We believe them. We confuse the lie with our own voice, our more rational self. In my own life, my voice of shame was always my more experienced, my more practical, more realistic, smarter self. And if I think of my inner critic in this way, like I always used to, I would never challenge it. The only reason why I challenge it is because, hey, maybe it's not so smart. Maybe it actually is mistaken. Maybe it's misguiding me. Maybe it's not even true. But usually whatever we think, we believe, right? And unless I could separate it a little bit from myself, I would never define my own rational self. We don't do that. We don't do that just because somebody else says it. We do not betray our deeper self. And in the book, we talk about that visual of a person going on the train. And if you know the way to Manhattan and you're getting on the train that's going to Manhattan, and you think you're going to Manhattan, but you look out the train's window by every stop and you notice, oh my, these stops are not taking me to Manhattan. They're going downtown. They're the opposite direction of where I want to be going. With that, we get off the train, we get onto the correct train. We walk around the platform, we get onto the train that's going in the direction that we want to be going. But that's only if we can recognize the signs on the streets. If I'm new to Manhattan, if I'm new to New York City, and I look out the train and I have no idea that those street names are actually not the direction of where I want to go, I believe I'm going in the right direction. That belief is a lie because I'm actually not going in the right direction. So what would help me get off the train? It's only if I could become familiar with what it looks like. And it's the same thing in our minds. We need to become familiar with what the truth looks like so that when something denies the truth, contradicts or rejects the truth, we'll be able to say, oh, nope, that's actually not where I want to be going. We need to become familiar with what shame looks like. So when we're doing shame, it's like, oh, that's shame. That's a lie. That's not true. That's it. That's worthlessness. That's the opposite of what I really want to live by. And it's certainly the opposite of what I believe on a deeper level. So that's, so how do we actually do that? Sorry. How do we become familiar? Because that's the cure. That is our cure. The cure is clarity and full-fledged exposure. It's like you're in a dark room and there's different things in the room. That room, walking in the dark, it's an obstacle course. I'm going to trip over everything that's lying around on the floor. But if I turn on the light and I see what's there, and then I can make decisions about what I see. I could step over the chair. I could move the chair. I could step on top of the chair. I could sit on the chair. You do whatever you want with the chair. But if the room is black and I'm walking and I bump into the chair, I could trip. I will fall. I'll hurt myself and I'll hurt the people I care about. So that's what we want to do. We want to get into full-fledged exposure, turning on the light. Because we do not knowingly buy into a scam. None of us would do that. As soon as we know it's a pit that we're going to fall into, we're not going to go there. We pull out, right? When we don't pull out, it's when we don't let go of a belief, it's only because a part of us, at least, believes that it's true. Remember that story that we told a bunch of times with Azman Chapzich, when the teenager is riding on the horse, right? And the Baal Tanya said, you can, that horse, because it's going so fast and so strong, it could take you very fast, very far from where you want to go. And the guy said, what Azman Chapzich, as soon as I become aware, I could turn. So how do we give ourselves that Azman Chapzich? How do we give ourselves that wake up, that shake up, that consciousness, that being alive and alert to the truth that we want to live by? How do we give ourselves the gift of clarity to know that this is my true self? This is who I really am. This is myself. Anything else is not really me because it contradicts the real me. So I want to do something for a minute. I think we may have done this before, but let's do this for a minute. If you can think about who Hashem is and one thing that you know about Hashem for 10 seconds, one thing that you know about Hashem, or one thing that you know about your neshama for 10 seconds, starting right now. So when you do that, when you think about Hashem, what happens for you? What changes? What kind of shift do you experience in your heart, in your body? What happens? Anybody? Wow, that's so wonderful. So thinking about Hashem gives you a sense of forgiveness, a sense of love. You are good, enjoy.
Yeah.
You don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to explain. You don't need to engage. You don't need to take anything from anybody that you don't want to take. You could just be. You could be your beautiful self, your beautiful, loving self. So on the chat, people are saying that when we think about Hashem, and Hashem's awesomeness and who Hashem is. Somebody wrote, I feel warmth flowing through my body. I feel forgiveness and that I am given another chance. I feel a sense of unlimited power and resources to tap into for help and strength. Wow. Somebody wrote, I think of Hashem as unjudging, and that shows me I can do that too and be like that, not judging. Somebody else is sharing something. I was the one slinging the mud an hour earlier after spending 3 hours on the phone with AT&T. My nerves finally frazzled out, and my daughter walked in, and I was a frightful sight. I could have easily just kept on down that horrible road and ruin everyone's evening, but I stopped a minute, remembered who I am and who trusts in me, that I can do the right thing, stopped me in my tracks, and Hashem saved the evening. Wow. Your neshama saved the evening. Your power of your neshama saved the evening. That is amazing. Somebody else is going back to thinking about Hashem and what that does. Someone sharing unknowable love, goodness, a kind of warmth in my heart, like a solar plexus. Such great language here. Okay, so this little exercise that we did was literally for, what was it, 10 seconds, right? When we learn about Hashem's awesomeness, and when we think about Hashem's awesomeness, learning gives us those ideas. Learning gives us the knowledge to think about, to reflect about. But when we do that, when we think about Hashem's awesomeness, that very simple action that didn't take any exertion other than in our minds, that simple action of thinking releases calm, secure energy into our bodies. And when we do this again and again and again, every time we do this, we are changing our internal wiring. And over time, we become more and more awake and sensitive to the truth we want to live by. But here's what very often happens. Let's say if I'm doing a workshop, or if somebody hears this for the first time, and all of you have been part of this process for a while now, and many of you have done the book. This is your second time, or maybe even your third time doing this book. So when I put out that question, think about Hashem for 10 seconds, and what does it do for you? Wow, there were such intense, strong, energetic, real solid responses. And I think it's because you've been doing this for a long time. Every time you think about Hashem, you create energy. It's like putting power, adding value, adding power to that thought. And then the next time you think about it, you trigger all that energy and all that power. But if somebody has never done this before, somebody is completely new to this work, what they might say is that, hey, I was feeling anxious and I thought about the fact that Hashem is taking care of me and it did nothing. I'm very glad for her that she's some sort of angel, that she was stressed out and frazzled. 3 hours on the phone with AT&T could frazzle anybody's nerves, right? And what calmed her down was just that Hashem trusts in her and Hashem is counting on her and she knows she could do it. It wouldn't do that for me. Okay, someone will say, I thought about the fact that Hashem is taking care of me and it did nothing to take the edge off of my anxiety. I got zero relief from that activity. Or someone might say, I was feeling insulted and I told myself that I am worthy and it's okay, but that did not help me feel better. Or like the title of I put on the email today, what was it? I'm trying to tell myself that I'm good. I want to think that I'm good, but I feel bad. So now what? There's a disconnect here. So the feeling that we have and the value that it represents is deeply rooted in so many layers of our consciousness. And it's actually deeply rooted even instinctively in our bodies. And meanwhile, the thought about Hashem is barely scratching the surface of our consciousness. I just want to add here, because this is what we're doing in Tanya, is that actually the thought about Hashem is also deeply embedded in our bodies and in our subconsciousness, but we're not aware of it, okay? It's an external, so what we are aware of is that this idea about Hashem's awesomeness, Hashem's protection of us, Hashem's goodness, Hashem's love, Hashem's embrace of us, it's a thought. It's only, maybe for some of us, it's only words that we say. Maybe we don't even really believe it. So we need to do some work, but what is the work? And that's what we're talking about. That's what the rest of this chapter talks about. It's a process of learning called Chachma, Bina, and Das, a three-part process. Each of these words represent a different layer, a different level of acquiring wisdom. Chachma is that initial insight. It's exploring, learning, developing a little bit of insight in our minds. It's externally in our minds. Bina is making a personal connection with it already, turning around the idea. Bina is understanding. We're coming to understand it in our minds. Now it's becoming settled in our minds. We're wrapping our minds around it. We're playing around with it. We're reflecting, we're connecting, we're meditating, we're analyzing, we're applying. All that stuff, we're making a personal connection with that idea. And Das is when it becomes very deeply, Das is connection. Das is a knowing that is used in the Torah to refer to physical intimacy between man and woman. Das is a kind of knowing that you could feel in your bones and experience with every fiber of your being. And this is what I wanted to do in the worksheets. What I'm excited to do today is to go through that process and take us through that process with a specific idea, because I think each of us, some of us do a lot of learning. Some of us do a lot of the reflecting and the meditating and the affirming and the Bina. And some of us, I think that a lot of us, the magic and the what with Bina, you could create feelings in your heart, but those feelings will fly out the window in a moment of trigger. What we really want to do is the Das. The Das keeps the feelings in our heart. The Das is what keeps it in our heart and in our bodies. Let's go into the worksheets. Very, very excited about these worksheets. Okay. So the first one is not really a worksheet. I'm just going to read it because it's more like awareness. Okay. So I want to think that I'm good, but I feel bad. What now? Okay. This is a three-part process that is taught to us in chapter 3 of the Tanya, Perek Gimel of the Tanya. It's a three-part process that allows our awareness of Hashem to be absorbed in our minds, our hearts, and our bodies. And as I wrote that, our minds, our hearts, and our bodies, I was thinking, okay, Chachma is when it gets into our minds, a superficial layer of our minds. Bina is when we get Leiv Lahavin, right? Our heart starts to feel, our heart starts to get the memo, our heart starts to understand. Das is when it really becomes part of changes the way we experience our reality. So Chachma, Bina, Das. Chachma is that flash of insight, the flash of wisdom. It's in the surface of our minds. We are in the mode of Chachma. I'm reading from the first worksheet, okay? We are in the mode of Chachma when we are curious and open to learning, exploring, and discovering. So if you want to do a moment of Chachma, what is the truth about Hashem that can help me feel calm and secure? Look it up in a book, look it up in a tape, listen to a podcast, listen to a shir, right? That's going to give us knowledge. That's going to give us information that has the potential to change the way we feel. What is the truth about Hashem that it can help me feel worthy and respectable? These are ideas, right? We've explored them, but until you actually do more work with them, the first thing is reading the book, right? Learning the idea, learning the concept that actually Hashem is in charge of the world and he's the only one pulling all the strings. Or actually Hashem is absolutely good and you have a part of Hashem in you and you are absolutely good. You're absolutely respectable. It's a concept. It's just an idea. That's Chachma. Bina is when we come to understand that a little bit more. We reflect on it. We maybe give an analogy we attempt to impact our hearts by developing more understanding, a deeper understanding it. We're in the mode of Bina when we're reflecting on a specific idea, meditating on it, turning it around in our minds and forming that connection. What does this idea look like? In the book, I just want to make something clear. In the book, these questions were under the category of Das, but I have since developed a deeper insight of what Das is and the difference between Bina and Das. So I changed it here. Bina is that meditation, and forming a personal connection and arousing emotions is part of Bina. So what does this idea look like in real life? Where in my life or in the world around me can I see this concept play itself out? How does this idea coincide with the situation I'm dealing with? How does this message apply to me on a personal level in my current set of circumstances? All this, we didn't yet do anything in our bodies. We're making a connection in our minds. Das is knowing it and absorbing it deeply on a sensual level. We are in the mode of Das when we are integrating the idea into our core values and allowing it to change the way we experience reality. So I just want to put this out there for 1 second, because I know that we've discussed this differently. For a long time, I've been trying to understand what is the difference, what is the act of the difference between Bina and Das, because we always translate Bina and Das as Bina is meditation and Das is forming that personal connection. But I'm like, what is the act? What do you have to do to form the personal connection? What's different about it? And when I studied the words more recently, like a few months ago, again, I realized that when the Baal HaTanya describes the action of Das, what he says is, V'yiska machshavtai, fixate your thoughts on the idea, right? B'chayzek uv'hasmada. Chayzek means strength and hasmada means consistency. Fixate your thoughts on this with chayzek and hasmada. And I thought, when do you need to hold on to a thought with strength and consistency? The only time you do that is when you're being faced with resistance. When you're walking down the street and the wind blows, what do? You hold on to that shaitel or to the hat or to the scarf or whatever it is that's on your head, right? Because when the sun is shining, we don't have to hold on to it. We only need to hold on to it when there's a wind blowing against it. So v'yiska machshavtai b'chayzek uv'hasmada implies that there's something pushing against it, and yet we're holding on. That was my first aha moment with what the act of Das really means. Das is when we're facing resistance to the idea and we hold on to it anyway, then it becomes Das. Then it penetrates our bodies because it changes the way we're experiencing a situation. And that changes us on a deep level. That was the first thing. And then a couple of weeks ago in Parshas Shemais, there was a mimer, the Baal HaTanya on Parshas Shemais, where it talked about V'yedu Mitzrayim, and Mitzrayim will know. The word Da'as was there, and the Baal HaTanya translated it, quoting, I forgot where, another commentary on the Chumash that translated the word Das as breaking something in order so that something else will emerge. So that strengthened my understanding of what Das is. Das is breaking through that resistance so that a deeper connection with that idea becomes actualized. So that we actually, because everyone always says Das is when you form a personal connection, but how does it become personal? So they say, well, meditate, a different kind of meditation, but it can't just be a different kind of meditation. It's a different action. It's not just meditation. It's looking the resistance in the eye, listening to the resistance and making a decision. No. I'm holding on to this idea, even in the face of resistance. So that's Das. And we'll go through this more and then we'll open up to questions, okay? So we're in the mode of Das when we are integrating the idea into our core values and allowing it to change the way we experience reality. When I think about this idea, so here we're taking it a step further. It's not just meditating, turning it around in our minds, analyzing, reflecting. When I think about this idea that Hashem is in charge of the world, or that I am good, what is the resistance that comes up for me? I know for myself, and I would think, oh, I'm good because Hashem is good. So I'm a carrier of Hashem's light, so I am good. And a voice inside my head would be like, what? Come on, get real, get practical. Okay, maybe a part of you is good, but you're not good, right? If I could look at that resistance in the eye and say, well, actually, I know you are my more experienced, smarter self. You've been there for very long, and I believed you for all this time, but now I'm making a decision that no, in the face of no, actually, no, I am good. And I believe it. It's not a decision that I'm saying as an affirmation that I'm repeating that I don't really believe. I make that decision deep in my heart with my whole self. I'm making this decision, right? So that's the difference here. Okay, if I would accept this idea as being true, here's another question that can trigger an experience of das, is if I would accept this idea as being true, what would change for me? And what do I need? Here's another little question, another good question. Sometimes if you want to hang something up in your closet, you need to make room. You need to move something aside, or you need to take out something so that you can fit it in. So that's this question here. What do I need to move aside or let go of in order to create space in my life where this idea could find its space, can take root, can really become mine, can belong in the closet of my mind? What am I moving aside in my mind? What's going to shift in my mind to make space for this? What's the before and after? Before, I used to think that my qualities are something that I get. Now, because I have a neshama, I'm going to decide that actually, no, it's not something that I get. It's something I could do by thinking about my neshama, by becoming more aware of it, by embracing it, by aligning myself with it. You hear that difference? By creating a before and after in our minds, by really embracing that before and after and allowing it to breathe. Okay, the next two worksheets are just different ways of coming at the same thing. First is a process, and we did this once before. Let's practice the Chachma Bina Das process, okay? Chachma, what are some ideas that you know about Hashem? Anybody? You want to unmute yourself? Let's do that. I think this is a worksheet we can all do together. What are some ideas that you know about Hashem? While you're thinking, I want to just read what someone said here on the chat because it's so great. As an analogy for what das is like the resistance of that dumbbell in weightlifting. If you lift a half a pound weight, it's most likely not challenging enough to cause an increase in strength. The resistance has to be heavier. It's only with this heavier weight that I can get stronger. By facing that resistance and holding myself, not letting the resistance knock me down, but me holding it. I am the agent of change over here. That's not the agent of change. This idea is going to be the agent of change, the agent of influence in my life. That strengthens our muscle. That's our muscle, our das, our connection. That's what allows that idea to become part of our muscles, to become part of our bodies. Thank you so much for sharing. It's a great question. It comes up every single time. If I'm going to tell myself that I'm good, and I actually believe that I'm good, what would make me change? So really, if you think about it, okay, what makes us change is not the awareness that we're bad, but that we have it in us. We have the capacity to do something. If I believe that I'm going to lose this game of chess, I'm not playing with you. Why would I play if I'm going to lose? It's not going to be fun. I might play just to entertain you, but then I feel good about it. But if I will never be able to bake a cake What's the point of baking a cake if it's not gonna come out good? I'll try once, I'll try. If I don't believe I'm gonna succeed, why would I try? We don't try. Maybe we should. We should try, because we should always try, but we do not try unless we actually believe we're gonna succeed. We have this notion in our heads that if I tell myself I'm bad, then I'm gonna shame myself into changing. That actually doesn't work. I mean, if it works for somebody and if it works for you, go ahead and do it. But the way Yiddishkeit is set up is that every single night before we go to sleep, we say Shema. That is the time to reflect on our day, and along with thinking about what we did right, to think about what we want to fix. Where do I want to shine with greater strength tomorrow? Where do I want to grow? How do I want to stretch? Which strengths am I not using? These are all questions we can ask ourselves at night in a moment of honesty and in a moment of reflection, from the place of believing that we're good and from believing that we could. And of course, at the end of every week, and every Erev Rosh Chodesh is known as a mini Rosh Hashanah, right? And before Rosh Hashanah, we do the same thing. We reflect on our year and we think, where do I want to grow? How am I going to stretch more? How am I going to shine more this year? So being good is not a parking place. Being good is the permission to show up as good. I am good and I can be good. Because I am inherently good, that's why I have it in me to show up this moment as good. And let's be specific, okay? Somebody shared, and I've shared this example a couple of times, but this is the one that comes to my head all the time, okay? Let's go with the example that somebody on this chat just shared. She was totally frazzled, totally unnerved, a basket case, irritable, annoyed, falling apart. And the thought that, hey, Hashem trusts me. I have it in me to show up to this moment and to greet my daughter with love and with kindness and with patience. That's what helped her shift, and that's what helped her do it. If she would at that moment say, "Oh, I'm an irritable basket case," she would show up and be irritable to her daughter. Or the example that I always share, that I've shared a couple of times, where the woman said, she always used to tell herself she's a slob. And she opened the kitchen cabinets and 3 things fell on her head from that cabinet. And she's like, "Oh, I'm such a slob." And then she's like, "No, I'm good. I'm a chooser. And I could do whatever I want right now. And I'm going to take 3 seconds to straighten up that cabinet." From a place of believing in ourselves, we do change and we do grow. It's not a parking place. No, she wasn't a slob. She was doing a slobby thing. Two totally different things. All the things that we need to change and all the areas of growth are just things we need to do. They're not who we are. We are good. And it's because we're good that we have the capacity to change our behavior. And imagine if we could relate to our children from that perspective. Imagine if we could relate to ourselves from that perspective, to our husbands from that perspective. That's the only form of unconditional love, is unconditional value, respectability, and goodness. I want to say one other thing here. I want to connect what you're saying to the Das, okay? Because that's what everyone is. That's the work, okay? When I tell myself I'm good, what comes up in my mind is 101 reasons actually why I'm not good. Really, I'm good? Really? Did you hear did you hear what silly thing I just did? I left all my phones ringing in this room, so and disturb a bunch of people's time and attention. Like, what? That's good? Come on, right? I mean, and that's just a little example. That actually doesn't make me feel bad. I'm just telling you what it would make me feel, a couple of years ago. But there are other things that today will make me feel bad, right? But in that moment, when I could look at that idea in its eye, at that messy cabinet, at that irresponsible, forgetful, impulsive, irritable, that thing that I did that I'm not proud of, that thing that I did that I don't call good, that I don't call wholesome, that I don't call respectable, in my judgmental self, okay? If I could look at that thing and say, you're just a thing, you're not me, You're a moment in time. You're not me. That releases it from me. That makes me empowered to do better next time. That releases me. That enables me to fix it. Because if it's me, it's beyond me. It's bigger than me. But if it's just a thing, if it's just something that I did, then the I that did it can also fix it. And it doesn't mean permission to now go just do mistakes the whole day. It really, 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 it is so, so empowering. And that decision, every time we make it, we look at something that we did and we say, you're just something I did. You're not who I am. That decision really changes our mind-body connection deeply. That's not a superficial thought. That becomes a bodily experience that changes the way I experience this moment, not just in my mind, but in my heart and literally in my body. It changes the energy that I feel. I just like that exercise that we did before, but here it's at a much deeper level because I'm facing something so real, so deep inside of me. And each time we do it, we're peeling away another layer, another layer, another layer, and bringing, I call that a geula moment because it's literally bringing geula into our hearts. It's bringing Hashem's presence into our hearts. It's a da'as choice. And geula is described as a time when Hashem's da'as, kimala aretz deya es Hashem, the world will be filled with Hashem's da'as all over the place. Okay, there's another question here. Let me take it before we continue. What if I do keep making the same mistakes because I cannot muster the courage to do a better job, which I believe I should, and I know I could, but it's so hard? What if I do keep making the same mistake because I cannot muster the courage to do a better job, which I believe I should, and I know I could, but it's so hard? I love the way you worded this question, because this question shows me that this is progress, that you're not judging yourself. You're saying there's a mistake that I make, there's a weakness that I have, there's a habit that I have, there's a behavior that I do. And I want to insert here, there's a thing we all do. Everybody has a thing we do and we're not so proud of that we want to change. It might be overeating. It might be mindlessly eating. It might be, letting our eyes linger where we don't really want them to be lingering. It might be over shopping, over cooking, overworking, overdoing, over reading, whatever it is. Everyone has something and it's hard to change. The fact that you can look at that thing and say, I don't have the courage to change it's a different topic. So where do I find the courage to change? That's a good question, but that's not a contradiction. The fact that you don't have the courage to change doesn't make you any less good. It makes you a person who is human like the rest of us and is on a journey and is in a process looking to activate more courage in your life. It's a different question. How do I find the courage to change? It's a great, I want to just put one quick answer here is that I think that sharing this with a friend to get support, to get someone to cheer you on would be very helpful. That's number one. Number two, doing it once, like without thinking, for me, bypassing my mind. I shared this on the Tanya thing, like telling myself I am fasting, and then I don't have to think about if I'm going to eat, I'm not going to eat. That is one thing that helps me not eat cake. Like I'm bypassing my mind. It's just, I'm not doing the mind thing. It's just jump right away. I don't even get into a conversation. That gives me courage. Doing it once already gives you the courage. Doing it a little bit of it, doing it a tiny, minute form will give you that courage. You get more courage by acting with courage because your courage is already there. And the minute you act on the courage, it's like unleashing that wellspring of courage that you already have inside of you. So we did this process, but let's look at how it goes in the worksheet, okay? Chachma, what are some ideas that you know about Hashem? And this is also for those of you who run groups, this is how we do it. What are some ideas that you know about Hashem and just collect? I know Hashem is in charge. Hashem is capable of everything. Hashem is Kol Yachol. Hashem is the only power. Hashem is the creator of the universe. Hashem is bigger than the universe. Hashem is infinite. Hashem is loving. Hashem is forgiving. Anything that you know about Hashem. Bina, choose one topic, one idea from the Chachma box, and let's do the Bina on that. And that's, what else do you know about this? And what else? And what does it mean? And what does it look like? And how does it play itself out in your life? And Das, let's do the Das, is if this idea had a shape, a color, a sound, a visual imagery, what might it be? Right. Because actually, when we are triggered and we are in a moment of insecurity, or we're faced with a situation that's challenging, right? What happens is our executive functioning goes offline. Our thinking brain goes offline, and we move into our primitive reptilian, or what we've used here, amygdala, right? So what happens then? So of course I'm not in my neshama mode, because my neshama is all about, the thinking. It's in my mind in a certain sense, right? But if we have processed this, first of all, our neshama is also in our body. Our love for Hashem is also in our bodies, as we're learning now in the Tanya's chapter 18 through 25. It's all about how to activate that part of us, because it's already there. But that's not I want to talk about this tool as something that we could integrate into our bodies. I love the way you said it. If I tell myself a whole day that I'm strong and that I am good, it's not going to help me, because I'm not convincing myself on a deep level. I'm not experiencing it. I need to experience it to make it part of my body, to make it part of my actual experience, so that it changes my reality. Rabbi Yoel Khan was a master teacher. He shared this story. I'm not sure if it's in the book, because I forgot the book and I'm reading it now. It's not here yet, but I don't know if it's in the book. But there was a man walking to the home of a paritz, of a squire. Now, this squire was known to not be a nice person. As he's walking down the street, a fellow Jew is riding in a wagon. And the fellow Jew, is it in the book? Yes? Okay, I'll say it anyway. Moshe's riding in the wagon, and he calls out to his friend Beryl, I forgot the name. He's like, Beryl, come on into the wagon. Beryl says, nah, I'm not afraid. It's okay. Moshe says, no, you don't understand. There's a vicious dog in the courtyard. As soon as you get past the gate, the dog is going to attack you. Moshe says, or Beryl says, I'm not afraid of the dog. I have a special thing that I say. I have this special mantra. I have this special thing that I say that automatically neutralizes the dog and neutralizes the situation. I'm not afraid. So he called him a few times. They walk in, Beryl ride, the horse and wagon goes in, and the guy walks in, and the dog attacks, and he runs up to the wagon, and the guy in the wagon says, what happened? I thought you have something to say that protects you from the dog. And he says, no, the dog didn't give me a chance. He didn't even give me a chance to say anything. The dog was quicker than my tongue. The dog was quicker than my words. And I think we all experience that. The situation, the trigger beats me down before I even have the possibility to put the pause on to slam my foot on the brakes and think. I'm already speaking. I'm already screaming. I'm already lost. I'm already in fight or flight mode before anything. So what am I going to do? How am I going to help myself? And the answer is that we really need to do this proactively. We need to do muscle toning. Just telling myself I am good is not going to make me be able to experience that goodness. It's all going to be in my head. I have to do it. And specifically in this situation, the das is looking at my lies, looking at the shame, the blame, the helplessness, the self-pity, the indignity, the lack of respect, the inadequacy, all that junk, the podcasts, the negative podcasts that we listen to that we press play on that goes on automatically, right? When we turn on the car, the podcast starts playing. For those of you who have podcasts, it just starts playing as you turn on the car, right? Automatically, before it's quicker. It's quicker than you can even change it. It just automatically goes on. What are we going to do? We have to change it. We have to set that podcast before we turn on the car. We have to set it before we go into the car. Because once the car is on, it's automatically going on. Once we're triggered, it automatically goes on. Now, I want to just make a very important disclaimer here. Please, I'm begging you, look out. Your Yetzer Hara is going to try to use what we're saying now to hijack you and make you feel bad when you are upset. You're going to say, oh, that means I didn't do enough muscle building. I didn't do enough das. It's not true. Hashem designed us this way. And the goal of all of this is for us to do that moment of das so that we bring das, Hashem's light, into the world. We're bringing the Aleph of Geula, Aleph of Geula into Geula and transforming this moment, this space. And if we never fell, if we never slipped into our shame, blame, misery, self-pity, insecurity, fears, anxiousness, we would never have the space to let Hashem make that difference. So it's not that, oh, it's part of the process and the process is also good. The process is the goal. The process is the end game. The process is the destination. It's not, I used to think it's like something that I have to get through in order that I can do the rest of my life. No, that is the most important thing I could do in my life, is let Hashem make a difference here and now to my reality. That is das, that brings a personal geula, and that brings geula to the world. I want to do the next worksheet quickly because it's a really good tool, and I think that everybody, like, it's a good thing to have. Here it is. So let's practice the Chachma Bina Das process in a different form, and you'll use page 2 or 3, whichever one works better for you. But they both are the same idea. Okay. Chachma is number one. Number one is Chachma. Put in the circle there what I know about Hashem. Let's say Hashem is in charge of the whole world. Hashem is the only power. Hashem is my exclusive power. Okay. So Bina is all those circles around the Chachma. Bina is, okay, so if Hashem is the only power, then what does that mean about what I am worth? That means I have unstoppable power within me. Okay. What does it mean about who my husband and child is and what they are worth? They also have their own power. They're also in charge of their own choice. They also have unconditional love, respectability, and value. Okay. What does it say about my past? Well, it means about my past that actually every single thing that happened in my life was orchestrated by Hashem for my good and for my growth. Does that mean that nobody's responsible for their mistakes and nobody is accountable for their behavior? Absolutely not. Every person's accountable for their behavior. But what does Hashem's exclusive power tell me about my past is that it all happened between me and Hashem, not between me and anybody else on the face of this earth. Okay. If Hashem is the only power, what does it mean about my future? What does it mean about my work, my responsibilities? What does it mean about current events? What does it mean about a challenge I'm currently facing? Well, we could fill this out in a group, or you can fill it out yourself. And then Das is when we ask ourselves these kind of questions, okay? When I look at these ideas, beautiful ideas about Bina, right? Beautiful ideas on the Bina level. Well, if Hashem is the only power, that means nobody ever did anything to me. It was all between me and Hashem. Hashem orchestrated it all for my good and for my growth. Really? Huh. Except for that person, right? That's my personal inner resistance to that idea. That person actually does have power. That person, you know that story of the chassid of the Baal Tanya, who was bringing all night about Ein Od Movadei, Ein Od Movadei. There's nobody but Hashem, only He's the power. And at the end of the night, towards the morning, he was dancing with such hislahavus, with such enthusiasm and passion and joy. There's nobody but Hashem. And there was an oven sticking out of the wall, and he bumped into the oven. And he laughed. And he said, well, there's nobody but Hashem and the oven. Because the oven hurt, he got hurt from the oven. There's nobody but Hashem and the oven, you know? And I think we all do that. There's nobody but Hashem. Hashem is the only power, but that person is the reason I'm having a bad day. That phone company is the reason that I just wasted, you know, their nasty customer service is the reason. It's like, where does Hashem fall? Because, but when I can look at that and say, well, wait a minute, that's what I feel like, that person ruined my day, but really? And that person, I'm not judging them good, I'm not judging them bad, I'm not judging them altogether. I'm shifting the energy. Actually, what happened today was between Hashem and me, not between those people and me. It was between Hashem and me. And it was for my good and for my growth. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I accept that as my personal truth. In that moment, the energy in my body shifts. It's not just something, a superficial thought in my head, like that original chachma. You see how this process works? So it's a real process. And if we do this every day, at least once a day, even once a day, or even if you do it once every other day, it's having this, learning about Hashem. And you do that when, you know, anytime you learn something new, that learning it's nice if it's often, because then you have more things to think about and more truths to ponder and more truths to really integrate into your reality. But Bina is thinking about it. It's davening. Bina is big time. We have Bina every single day when we daven. Adonai Elam Asher Malach. When we say that it's the recommendation at the end of this chapter, chapter 6, to say Adonai Elam every day. Read it once in English and think about the words as you're saying it. It's such beautiful, powerful words. It concludes with Hashem li v'lo ira. We need those words today. Hashem is with me and I will not fear. If we just take it in every morning, but that's still intellectual. That's still, I want it to be real. But then if I have a moment of anxiety and I talk to my heart and I say, I know you're so sad. I know you're so worried. I know you're so concerned. I know you're feeling the flutters right now because of what you just heard and the news that just played or the news that someone just said. But I want to tell you something. I want to remind you, Hashem is in charge and Hashem is with us. And we don't have to really be afraid. And if your heart is open to accepting that and you decide that that's true, and there's a little bit of relief to that anxiety, even a little bit of relief, that is das. That's a transformative experience. And then we just brought the chachmas no longer on the superficial level of our minds. It's not just in our hearts, it's in our bodies. It's transformative. And it changes not just our own lives, it changes the world, it brings the geula into the world. So this is a great question. And the fact that you're asking the question is in a moment of das. Because we're talking about two things that we used, right? One is that Hashem is good and therefore we are good. We're inherently good. And our goodness cannot be changed or diminished by anything, by anyone, including our own selves, right? Another thing we've been talking about is that Hashem is the exclusive power, right? And so what you're doing now is you're saying, you're listening to that inner voice of resistance and you're saying, but what about that? And everybody who's listening is doing exactly the same thing. And if we want to do das, we need to say, well, what about that? And we need to not push it aside, not squash it and push it under the rug, but hear that voice inside of our head that says, hey, but what about that? And tune into it and make a decision. So here's the thing. If I did something wrong, I am responsible for my behavior and I need to fix it. What gives me the possibility to forgive myself is those same two ideas. Number one, obviously, if it already happened to a certain extent, Hashem wanted it to happen. Hashem set me up with those limited skills, with that limited knowledge, I'm not blaming Hashem, but to a certain extent, I was limited in that situation. At the same time, I'm responsible. I need to do teshuvah. And that's why in the Torah, there's a concept of karbanos. And in halacha, there's a concept of forgiveness. There's a concept of teshuvah. We need to return. We need to repair what we did wrong. If we stole, we need to give it back. If we hurt somebody, we need to share love. And if we did something that's irreparable, then we need to let that regret be the catalyst for that much more goodness and kindness and love and positive behavior. That's what we could do. And when we make a korban, when we say Hashem forgive me, we say Hashem's name as a signature for that blessing. Every single day we say Salach lanu kichatanu, forgive us for we have sinned. And we make a blessing with Hashem's name on those words. We say, blessed are you, Hashem, who forgives us, because we are confident in his forgiveness. If we do tshuva and we do that process and we truly regret it and we truly do whatever we can to repair, and we let that regret be a catalyst for future growth and to guide, that doesn't change. That means we're good. And even when we did something bad, we are not bad. That thing is bad. We're not bad. Evil is evil. The Yetzer Hara is the Yetzer Hara. That's not me. I am not my Yetzer Hara. I don't want to talk about people. I want to talk about each and every one of us. We are not evil. Even if we do something that could be classified as evil. Today, this moment, the fact that we're alive means that we could fix it to the extent that Hashem allows us to fix it. And that is the gift and the power of teshuvah. We could bring about this for hours, but that's the direction. Yes. If I am good, then I am capable of changing.
Yes.
And if I am a bad person, then I cannot change, and I'm going to be stuck in that. It's 100% true. Thank you so much for sharing that. Hashem believes in us, and we have it in us to show up with our goodness shining forth. I just want to take the time for one more question. If anyone has to go, but this is just a very important question. What about someone's behavior that actually damaged me? How will I face that with Hashem's truth? How does my awareness of Hashem's truth help me reconcile that? Where somebody actually, it's not forgivable because I am still dealing with the damage today. Yeah, it's very, very difficult to do. I don't think that that's your first order of business. Meaning when you're dealing, if a cup of water spills, and I know that I'm minimizing it, but if a cup of water spills, my first thing that I need to do is I need to wipe away, I need to take care of the water. Then I could deal with who did it and my feelings about it and all that. I first need to take care of the water. So if my heart is bleeding, I don't even think it's a question. The first question is not who did it. The first question is, how am I going to move on? How am I going to repair my brokenness? How am I going to heal? How am I going to find comfort and strength to take my next step forward? And that's about my own brokenness and my own healing. It's really not about the other person. But obviously, because, in that moment, that other person, we don't have to, my mother used to say on Isru Chag, not on Isru Chag, on Achron Shal Pesach, in Lubavitch, we're very careful not to make any crumbs over Pesach because we don't let the matzah touch any water. So we eat, literally in my house, growing up, we eat the matzah out of a bag. And everyone's careful, not a single crumb is allowed to go anywhere. We move away from the table. Anyways, on Achron Shal Pesach, we're allowed to make crumbs. My mother always used to say, there's no hinder to make crumbs. You don't have to make crumbs. You're allowed to make crumbs. You don't have to make crumbs everywhere. And it became a joke in our house. There was no hinder to make crumbs. Just because that other person didn't do it, there's no hinder to put yourself in that other person's presence and trigger yourself again and again and again and engage in that relationship and, put yourself out for feeling hurt. I think it's okay to give yourself space, to give yourself time, to give yourself, to let yourself heal. But definitely a part of the healing is to know, to tap into that part of you that's actually not damaged, because it's undamageable. There's a part of us that could be abused. And then there's a part of us that's not abusable because it's untouchable. It's unchangeable. It's actually just like nobody could change Hashem. Nobody could change your soul and the essence of who you are, and the purity and the innocence and the beauty and the goodness of who you are. And so getting in touch with that place inside of you that's undamageable is part of the healing process. And that could only be when you really, part of that process of being able to access that, because everybody has it. But when we believe, the more value we attribute to Hashem's presence and to Hashem's truth and to Hashem's power, the more value we attribute to the truth of our own undamageable neshama. So it has to come together. So I think that acknowledging that, yes, even though there's so much hurt and there's so much pain and there's brokenness and indescribable anguish, for some reason that we cannot even begin to imagine, Hashem, this didn't happen to me. This didn't just happen to me. This is not done to me. Hashem needed me for something that's for my good and for my growth. And I don't understand it. And I may never understand it, but 100% something beautiful will grow from this pain, from this process of work, from this process of needing to tap into my deeper, undamageable self and allow that to flow into the rest of myself and heal and feel whole again and feel strong and feel courageous and feel like a self again. So it's all connected, but that's the process. For every single one of us, the process is going to look different because our stories are different, our experiences are different, but the components of the process are all the same. It's learning about Hashem, the Chachma part, the Bina part, really thinking about it, meditating, opening our minds and hearts to absorb the magnitude of what we're saying when we say Hashem is the only power, Ein Od Milvado. Becoming aware of when we're contradicting ourselves. And Das is when we can look at all the but Lamaisa, Hashem is the only power, but Lamaisa, you know what I mean? Hashem is the only power, but what about this and what about that? Yeah, actually, yeah. Even in that space where somebody damaged me, Hashem that person wasn't doing it to me. Hashem was sending me on a mission that he needed only me to accomplish. Like Yosef HaTzadik said to his brothers, when Yaakov passed away, and they were afraid, now he's going to get back at them. And they said, please don't hurt us. He said, you didn't do it to me. Hashem sent me here. And he said, Hashem didn't send me here for nothing. Hashem sent me here for a purpose, to sustain the world, for a purpose that's meaningful and that only I was able to accomplish. So I want to wish everyone, because this is we're going to take a couple of weeks break now. I'm really going to miss you all. And we're going to be back soon. But I just want to thank you very, very, very much for being part of this process and for teaching me. And in preparing for today, I realize and appreciate even more the groups that we've had and the questions that we had. Because every time someone asked me a question, it was mental resistance. You know what I mean? On my part, it pushed me to question, to challenge, to think, and ultimately to come to discover deeper insights into the truths that we're all exploring and learning and growing in together. So I just want to thank you all for that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to reconnecting very, 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 very soon. If you message to 718-576-0338, or email to info@energizedliving.org. Our wonderful secretary will send out a list of new groups that are starting or groups that are open to people to join on Zoom. Thank you so much.